Well, howdy, physics sleuths and inquisitive souls, and welcome again to yet another lecture of Sermon of Sean. So today, I'd like to talk about Jonah and the fish. It's a kind of interesting story because there's a part to it that nobody talks about. I don't think they realize it, to be brutally honest. I think it's kind of a hidden mystery that people just don't get yet. Got a little bit in here. And it's that he died. I think he died and was resurrected by God. I don't think he lived in that fish's belly. And I think you're going to see what I'm talking about here. Let's take a look. So Jonah was called to be a prophet by God later on in his life. I don't know, his 40s or 50s or something. And there was this, large city back then, Nineveh, like 130,000 people, and they're going dark side. They're doing a lot of bad, sinful stuff, and God's not about it. So he's like, I'm gonna kill them all. So he sends Jonah, and Jonah, when he eventually gets there, it is timed all times with a solar eclipse, and Jonah's like, my God's gonna destroy your son. Fuck you. Repent or I'll die. He's not doing a very good job of trying to save these people, but they take him seriously anyways because of the solar eclipse. So they all repent and they start wearing sackcloth, which is like cheapy bullshit clothing, and they fast. Everybody from the king down to the peasants, and God's like, okay, I might be able to work with this. So he decides not to kill them. But Jonah's pissed. He wants everybody to die. He's like, better to kill them all. Better to kill them all, God. Better. And kill me too. And that's Jonah for you in a nutshell, man. He's just he's a bitter, jaded man who just wants everybody to die. But God doesn't. He decides not to kill everybody, and he saves everybody. It's kind of like, there is repentance. God does change his mind if you do what he tells you to. He might not kill you. But the interesting part is that when God, first told Jonah, hey, man, I need you to go to Nineveh and preach to these mofos. They're getting out of hand. You need to go there. You're the man to do this. You need to preach. And Jonah's like, hell no, sir. Fuck you. I'm going to go to Tarshish. And so he goes the opposite direction. He goes from like Nineveh's like that way. He's like going that way to Tarshish, okay? On a boat. He's trying to get there as fast as possible. And the seas, the seas are, they're getting crazy, right? Because God's like, yeah, I'm not letting you get away with that, dude. Get over it. And so, while he's there on the boat, the sailors, the seas are getting crazy, and the sailors like, we never seen this before. This is what the hell's going on. And they try to like row to the shore, and they can't do it. God's not going to let them. And so eventually Jonah's like, yeah, that's probably my fault. Like I told my God, F you. And he's probably pissed about that. And so the sailors are like, what? You're a dick. And so they take him and throw him overboard. And then the seas chill out immediately. And yeah, they took him and cast him forth in the sea, and the sea ceased to rage. Blah, blah, blah. And then the men feared the Lord exceedingly and offered a sacrifice unto the Lord and made vows. So the men were like, yeah, we're sorry. And now the Lord had prepared a great fish to swallow up Jonah. And Jonah was in the belly of the fish for 3 days and 3 nights. Okay? 3 days and 3 nights. And then Jonah prayed unto the Lord, his God, out of the fish's belly. All right? And I said, I cried by reason of mine in affliction, and the Lord said he'd heard me. And out of the belly of hell cried I, and thou heardest my voice. So there's our first knot. Jonah is saying he was in hell, okay? He's saying I was in hell. Now, I personally believe earth is hell, okay? It's just that when we're alive, we call it earth. But when we die, it becomes our spiritual place, hell. And hell is not a good place to be because it's completely created and ran by humans, and humans suck. So it's just garbage. It's just a bunch of humans. They're sinful, running around, not giving a fuck about anything, treating everything poorly around them. And so God has to limit them and isolate the dead from the living, right? Put them at different realms so they don't mess up the living. So this is our first sign. Jonah isn't saying he was in the belly of the fish. He's saying, no, I was in the belly of hell. I was dead in hell. All right? For thou had cast me into the deep, in the midst of the seas, and the floods compassed me about. And thy billows and thy waves passed over me. And then I said, I am cast out of thy sight, yet thou will look again toward thy holy temple. The waters compassed me, even to the soul. These are a second nod, right? Jonah's saying, yo, when I was down there, like the water was surrounding me, okay? And I thought, previously, okay, what God clearly had to do is Jonah's eaten by a fish, like probably not a great white, probably like, a whale shark or like a giant blue whale or something. And then the whale would probably go up to the surface and get fresh air for Jonah to breathe every, 10 minutes or something and then go back, right? But I'm like, this doesn't make any sense, man. Because, is the whale going to gulp air in the belly and then, burp it out and then keep doing this? I mean, God can make him do it, I'm sure, but it sounds like it's an awful lot of work and it's going to be pretty miserable for Jonah, I don't know. It just didn't make any sense to me. But if you look about it, we're going to dig in this a little deeper, but even to the soul, right? So he's saying my soul was hit by the water. Water was going through my soul, not around my body, through my soul. So I think he was dead. And the death closed round about, and weeds were wrapped around my head. So the whale, I guess, is trying to eat, plankton or whatever, and it's getting like kelp or whatever, and the seaweed is getting, all wrapped around Jonah's face and everything. He's fucking dead, dude. I'm telling you, he's dead. You don't have seaweed just wrapped around your head, and you can't do anything about it if you're alive, okay? Clearly, he wasn't able to move and the sea, but he was aware of what was happening to him because God wouldn't let his spirit leave the body because God had the plan to resurrect him. And he can't resurrect him, the spirit's already left the body, so he has to keep the spirit in the body. Okay? So, I think Jonah's dead. That's why he couldn't move the seaweed off his face. He's dead. He ain't going nowhere. All right? So I went down to the bottoms of the mountains. Yet the earth with her bars was about me forever. Sounds kind of dead to me. Yet hast thou brought up my life from corruption, O Lord my God. And when my soul fainted within me, I remembered the Lord, and my prayer came unto thee into thy holy temple. And thou observed lying vanities for blah, blah, blah. I will sacrifice to thee. But he's saying, I'll not disrespect you again. And the Lord spoke unto the fish, and it vomited out Jonah onto dry land. Okay? So after 3 days and 3 nights in this fish, no break, no relief, and Jonah's like, I was in hell. There was the water was going through me. I was going in between mountains down there. I knew that somehow, and seaweed was wrapped around my face, but I couldn't do anything. I was dead in hell. I'm telling you, he was dead and in hell. All right? Now, this is an interesting thing. Because after this, the Lord was able to resurrect him without too much grief as all the other resurrections go down. And then Jonah had to do a 1 or 3 day march, I'm not even sure, to Nineveh from the sea. So after you get resurrected by God, you're relatively okay, right? But there are some limitations, it appears, to this. Like if we look, for instance, here are the 10 times that things have been resurrected in the Bible, okay? Aside from Jesus, maybe. We got in the Old Testament, Elijah resurrects someone. Uh, Elisha resurrects somebody. God resurrects an old man that I guess they threw his dead body in the tomb with Elisha, and the dead body hit the bones of Elisha accidentally, and God's like, oh, let back to life. Where the guy got resurrected. But clearly it was God, not Elisha, because like Elisha, when he was resurrecting people, he was like making out with the dead bodies to resurrect them. It was really weird. It was very, very weird. It was not like Jesus where he's like, rise. No, he's like laying on top of you, smothering you, like, and it says like hand to hand, palm to palm, like eye to eye, mouth to mouth. Like he's making out with you. It's weird. And then after long enough of him making out, his body heat would bring you back to life. I don't know. That was definitely God, as it says, raised by God. And then we got, Jesus resurrecting, like 2 doubters. Lazarus, he waited a while. He was dead for like 3 days, right, before he resurrected him. A lot of these were only dead for like a day, right? Um, Tabitha by Peter, Elictus by Paul. I haven't heard about this or Moses. I know Moses resurrected, I guess so. So they say. Those resurrected at Jesus' crucifixion, I don't know about that, but I guess they're raised by God. That's another thing. But there's some things to know about this, okay? Another one. Ain't nobody here been resurrected longer than Jesus. Jesus was the longest dead, like 3.5 days. So apparently 3.5 days is the limit at which you can go being dead before God can no longer resurrect you. And I believe that's because whatever decay process that's going on with the dead bodies, after 3.5 days, after 4 days, whatever, the process is so advanced that the damage to the cells cannot be repaired even by God's medical technology. Okay. But up to 3.5 days, it appears he can resurrect you willy, no problem, in a matter of minutes. And within minutes, you're up walking around as if nothing had happened. That's actually super impressive. Okay. But it appears 3.5 days. Now, something to look about here is that if Jonah was resurrected, then God, being the logical reasoning being he is, would probably choose to just simply, like I said, have the whale gulp air every how much ever so often, whatever, or do some voodoo magic to Jonah so he doesn't need oxygen for a few days. I don't know. Apparently, the path of least resistance in this case for the technology of God is simply to let Jonah die in the belly of the fish and then just resurrect him after 3 days like nothing happened. So we just know God's ability to resurrect, pretty easy. His ability to keep you alive underwater for a few days, apparently not so easy. The limitations of God's technology. And he does have limitations. We all have limitations. Every being in this universe has limitations. Every being. What makes you incredible is knowing what your limitations are and being able to play around them to get shit done. That's what makes you incredible. Not having everything has limitations. All right. So there's something interesting too. If we go to Jesus and his, for some reason he calls Jonah Jonas. I'm not sure why. But as for Jesus, or as for Jonas, was 3 days and 3 nights. Okay, yeah. So here's the thing, right? He's talking to the scribes and the Pharisees, and they're like, "Give us a sign." And Jesus is like, "An evil and adulterous generation seeketh after a sign, and there shall be no sign given to it, but the sign of the prophet Jonas. For Jonas was 3 days and 3 nights in the whale's belly. So shall the Son of Man be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. Remember, Jonas is like, I was in hell. I was down in the mountains, down there in the earth, and it was hell. Jesus is like, listen, you guys all want to see a magic trick, but I only got one more magic trick to show you. And that's the one of Jonas, where Jonas was dead for 3 days and 3 nights, and then God brought him back to life. And he's like, that's the only trick y'all are going to see from me from now on, is I'm going to be murdered, and I'm going to be crucified, and after 3 days, y'all going to think I'm dead and gone, and I'm going to come back. And that's the trick. So, I mean, even Jesus, when he's talking about, his crucifixion, his final sign, that's going to be given, he's saying it's like Jonah for 3 days and 3 nights being in the whale's belly. I think this is Jesus basically saying, listen, man, Jonas was dead, and I'm going to be dead too, but it don't matter because God, my Father, can resurrect anybody for up to 3.5 days. Like, it ain't nothing. So he's going to resurrect me, and y'all going to see that, and that's the last thing y'all going to see from me. That's what I think Jesus is saying here. But for some reason, ain't nobody know that. Ain't nobody talk about that. They all believe Jonah was alive and well in the fish's belly for 3 days and 3 nights. But it don't make no sense. The more you think about it, the more crazy it gets. But if you take it from Jesus' point of view, Jonah was dead, and God just has that power to resurrect him. It seems a lot more logical. That's all I'm saying. So, I just think, personally, this is important. Because it shows, that the limits to the technology of God. And while there are limits, it is pretty impressive, but there are limits, right? Like after 4 days, it looks like he's going to have a lot of trouble trying to resurrect you, because your decay is going to be too far gone. But after 3.5 days, he can deal with that. But there's certain things that he has trouble doing, like keeping you alive underwater for 3 days. Wow, that it's just easier for him just to let you die from whatever and just resurrect you like nothing happened. That's just wild. Then to have a sustained effort of keeping you alive or something. So that definitely shows in the mindset of God too, that he would rather do one event than impact you incredibly that will change the way you think and feel forever and change you than to do a constant, sustained effort in your life to change you. This is your God. It's good to know him and how he works and how he thinks and how he moves and operates. It's important. Unless you just want to be a dirty animal. I guess it don't matter at all. But I thought that was very interesting. It taught me some, even a little something, but it did teach me a little something looking into this as I reread the Bible and notice these finer details just popping out at me, screaming that ain't nobody really ever talked about before. But I guess we'll have that be all on this occasion. And soon, I'm thinking I'm going to be done with my experiments for generating anti-gravity very soon. I'm almost done. We'll see how I do. But until next episode, I'll catch you guys on the flip side. Adios, muchachos. Bye-bye.
Like, subscribe, submit.